first frame I ever made, which was basically a copy of an old steel mountain bike. And I shall never forget riding that bike, heading out of here and just going, wow, like I've done it, after sort of 15 years of wanting to build a frame. It took me 2 weeks to build it. Hours in the workshop late at night. It just took me forever as I slowly nutted out the processes and had to improvise tools along the way, because it's the first time I'd done anything. So I was like, okay, how do I do this? How do I hold these two bits together to braze them? So on. There was a lot of nutting out. And then perhaps I got a bit more serious about it and think, okay, well, if I'm going to make some money out of it, I've got to advertise and I've got to have a name. And I didn't want to use my surname. I didn't like the idea of Stredwick written, or like the traditional place. Oh, this is terrible file abuse, but I keep a couple of old blunt files just for doing this. This bike's for me. It's the fourth frame I built for myself in my frame building history. I had an altercation with a motorist. An old fellow did a Yui, pulled out in front of me, did a Yui straight in front of me, and I was moving pretty fast downhill in town in Hobart. And I had nowhere to go but straight into him. I hate bikes with stickers on. I like a plain finish. The number of bikes I've bought and I've peeled the stickers off, which you can't do now because they put a clear coat over the top and they're all fancy colours. I just like the simplicity of a single colour bike. Hence, that's what I do. But my brand, if you like, the V for Velosmith is brazed on, so nobody can peel that off. But it's subtle. It's enough to identify the frame as coming out of my workshop. If I'm working on a bike, whatever I'm doing, I like to be able to just put my hand on the tool or the part I want, which is one nice thing of having like a smaller workshop. But I do. You do get to the stage like we're working through a number of jobs here now this morning, and the tools just pile up until you go, and you have to have a clear up. Or you're trying to find a tool and it's under there somewhere and you can't find it. Oh, hang on, I put that away and forgotten to put that on. My first commercial sale, if you like, I didn't make any money out of it. I built up the bike as cost. There was a friend of mine who wanted to go touring and extended, months-long touring in Tibet. So, I built it for him at cost, and 3 weeks after I handed it over to him, he went back to Tibet for 3 months touring. And I would wake up in the middle of the night, just terrified that it was going to break. Not that maybe it was going to injure him, but I was concerned about him just stuffing up his trip, something wrong with the frame, it breaking, something, But anyway, it lasted. And so from then on, you just develop and people come to you and more people come to you and you think, oh, I'm onto something here. A lot of the frames I build to the traditional low trail, it's called French touring bike geometry, which is designed predominantly the way the French generally tour is with a really big handlebar basket, so a lot of weight on the front of the bike and maybe none on the back. There's some great pictures of bicycle delivery boys in Paris in the 20s and 30s, and they're all riding these bikes that were just specifically developed for carrying probably 25 or 30 kilos of newspapers on this big rack on the front. And that's how the geometry evolved, to make a bike that was actually rideable with that much weight on the front. It varies depending on the customer's requirements, but generally I err that way and err towards that geometry, which is quite a different touring bike geometry to the traditional English style touring bike geometry. They ride like supermarket trolleys, I think, when they're unladen. They're great when they're laden, do the job. Nothing special, but they do the job. Every material you build a frame with, any material you use for building anything, has pros and cons. One is not necessarily better than the other. I like stainless steel. The physics, I guess, and the technology of chromoly steel is developing in that the new stainless steels aren't actually chromoly, but they're incredibly tough. And to be stainless is just a step forward. It's the biggest step forward in durability. Because obviously any steel frame unless you really look after it really well. Eventually you will even get rust spots around the brazons, and eventually maybe a weak point, something will break because it's rusted through from the inside. I was intrigued with the roll-off hub, which is an internal geared hub from Germany. It has 14 gears in it, and I could see the beauty of this hub for touring, particularly for expedition type touring. You know, if you're touring overseas in weird and wonderful countries, or in remote areas, they're virtually indestructible. You can throw your bike on the roof of a bus in the third world and have people walk all over it with a roll-off hub and nothing will happen to it. Whereas you would never do that with a derailleur system. You're always going to be very precious. It's a relatively delicate system. So I could see the potential. So then I also I specialise in touring bikes with roll-off hubs, which is a niche market within a niche market. And so I don't have customers beating down my door, but I'm not short of customers. Really didn't have an idea that I was going to be here now 9 years later and making frames, and my bikes would be used for touring in just about every continent in the world except the Antarctic. But I still now, with this bike and my mountain bike, I'm very aware that I'm hooning around on a lovely contraption that I've put together from the design stage right through to putting all the components on it and heading off for a ride.